I know that a lot of English learners struggle with having an accent. As long as you have a native language that isn't English, and you started learning English after a certain age, it's almost inevitable that your native language and the sounds that you're used to will interfere with your English, such that you get that reaction of, oh, you're Chinese, you're Indian, you're Japanese, immediately when you start speaking English. To some people, that can be quite frustrating. I also know that a lot of people aspire to have that clear native passing English accent and see it as something to check off their lists. If so, keep watching because this video is all about helping you to think about accent in a better, more constructive way and giving you actionable steps to achieve that accent of your dreams. Hi friends, if you're new here, my name is Yuki. I'm a lawyer and YouTuber based in Hong Kong, and English is my second language. I took a course in uni which has changed my perspective about accents forever. This course was a liberal studies, global citizenship kind of program that students from any faculty could take, and it is about the use of English in Asian contexts. We explored how English is being used in different Asian communities. You actually have this full spectrum here. For example, say in Singapore, English is being taught and learned as a first language, and in other places, English is being taught and also used as an official language, for example, in Hong Kong, to where English only becomes a mandatory subject at school in later school years, and it's not being used very much outside of the classroom, for example, Japan. My biggest takeaways from that course was that number one, everyone has an accent, even the native speakers. So it doesn't really make sense when people say, oh, you speak with an accent. Number two, all accents are valid. No accents are wrong or lesser than others. And that is something very important for you to realize. There is nothing wrong with your accent. As long as the other person can understand you, which is the most important thing because language is for communication, any accent goes. Literally, you are okay just the way you are. That said, some of us do not like the way we sound in English. We want to sound more native, whatever that means. I'm being naive if I say accents don't affect the way you're perceived. People do naturally make judgments about where you're from and your level of education from the way you sound. Or maybe your primary goal for learning English is to communicate with people from the major English-speaking countries, for example, the US, the UK, Canada, or Australia. And sounding a bit more like them may make it easier for them to understand you. It's actually quite simple to change or improve your accent. Here's a 3-step framework. Step 1. Identify the accent you're going for. Obviously, you need to identify what accent you're going for, what you want to sound like at the end. I feel like for a lot of people, a general American accent would be the obvious choice because a lot of us are influenced and like US culture and content. The other major camp would be some form of a British accent. There are actually many accents being spoken in the UK, but most people would probably lean towards received pronunciation, RP, as a gold standard. For myself, I also leaned a bit more towards American or Canadian accent to start with because that was the preferred accent at school. But I'm gradually shifting more and more towards the British camp. Having spent some time working in London, dated a British guy at some point, and also spending lots of time working and interacting with British colleagues. I'm actually not too fussed about getting a pure British accent or any kind of accent at all. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've actually changed my accent for this video. I usually default to a more British sounding accent, but in this video I'm using a more American or Canadian sounding accent. This is just to show you that accent isn't set in stone. Some very talented people can shift effortlessly from one accent to the other, for example, professional voice actors. I'm not one of those people, but I have access to maybe 3 different accents, which I can pick and choose from depending on the context, the person I'm speaking to, etc. This whole accent thing is like putting on different skin. This is a concept I've talked about in my earlier video about my journey to fluency in English. I feel like I sound more measured and poised in a British sounding accent and more lit up and on it when I'm using an American accent. I'm happy with the international kind of accent I have right now, which enables me to be understood by most people. I definitely still have traces of Cantonese influence in my English, but that doesn't really bother me. That's just part of who I am and where I'm from, and I'm very comfortable with it. I can also sound like this if I want to. If I hear this kind of accent overseas, I know that I am among family. Step 2. Understand the makeup of your current accent, i.e. the components and features that make you sound the way you do. I'm not a professional linguist, so I'll only be explaining what I understand from observations throughout my years of learning. In each accent, there's a whole set of sounds, and if you change the sounds within the set, your accent changes and you sound different. Using my native language, Cantonese, as an example, here are some defining features of English in a Cantonese accent. Number 1, many people don't distinguish between the N sound and the L sound. In Cantonese, there is a distinction between the two, but the distinction is quite weak, and most of the time it doesn't cause confusion. Number 2, people carry over the tones in Cantonese across to English. Cantonese is a tonal language, so C, 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 C are all different words, and they mean different things. English has stressed and unstressed syllables as opposed to tones, but a person speaking with a Cantonese accent will still give them tones anyways. Number 3, the syllables will sound choppy and distinct, and the words don't flow from one to the other. That just mimics the way Cantonese is spoken. A combination of all these things and many more make Cantonese accent sound that way. For example, good morning would sound more like good morning in the Cantonese accent. Okay, over to you. What are the key features of your own accent? Maybe you say something rather than something, replacing the TH sound with a T. Maybe you add a vowel after the last consonant so that you say hotelu rather than hotel. Maybe you pronounce R in a different mouth position so that instead of reason, you say reason. If you want to change your accent, and only if you want to, those features that you've identified are the things that you should pay attention to in order to shift your accent. Try recording yourself and listening to a playback to see if you can spot these key features. Note that I call them features, not mistakes. Please rewatch this video from the beginning if you've missed a cue. If you feel like you can use a bit of help here, you can send me a short video of 30 to 60 seconds of yourself speaking or reading something in English, and I'll make a video reviewing your clips. I'll put the email address down in the description box below. Step 3, practice. Once you've identified the key features that make you sound the way you do, and you have an understanding of what you want to sound like instead, it's time to incorporate some practice. I think trying to speak while thinking about your accent doesn't work. Your brain just gets too busy. What I recommend doing instead is reading a short passage out loud, but in your target accent. For example, you can read a page from Harry Potter, you can read the captions of your favorite influencers. Try doing this as often as you can and incorporate it into your daily routine. Read the road signs in your target accent, read the menu in your target accent, read your studying or work material in your target accent. If you cannot read aloud in public, reading it silently in your head also works to some extent. This will train your tongue and your ears to adopt the new accent. Gradually, you default to the new accent even when speaking spontaneously. Even if you've practiced and you've got the most beautiful accent in the world, it will still go to waste if you don't have the right words and expressions to convey your wonderful ideas. To make your English sound more native, you need some useful idiomatic expressions in your toolkit, which is exactly what I talk about in this video, which I'll link here when it's available. As always, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.